Hello and welcome. I'm Leigh-Ann Gerrans and you're watching W News Extra, broadcasting live from the Al Arabiya studios. These are our top stories. Tensions between the US and China appear to ease as Trump cuts tariffs and gives his meeting with President Xi a 12 out of 10. Meanwhile, Trump orders the US military to resume testing of nuclear weapons in order to keep up with countries like Russia and China. Exit polls predict Rob Jetten, who's the leader of the Dutch centrist-liberal party D66, is on track to become the next Prime Minister of the Netherlands. And 5 more people have been arrested in connection with the Louvre jewelry heist during multiple raids across Paris. China and the US have agreed to a 1-year trade truce following talks between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping. The two leaders agreed to roll back export controls and ease other trade barriers. The meeting marked the end of a whirlwind tour of Asia for the US president, where he negotiated trade breakthroughs with South Korea, Japan, and Southeast Asian nations as well. To discuss this and all of today's stories, I'm joined by correspondent and columnist Gemma White and Dr. Elie Al Hindy, chairperson of the Department of Security and Strategic Studies at the American University in the Emirates. Dr. Elie and Gemma, thank you so much for joining me this evening. Dr. Elie, let's start with you. The much anticipated meeting between Xi Jinping and Donald Trump all happened, and we see this 1-year trade truce that's now in place. Do you think that this is just a temporary measure, or do you think this could last longer term?
It is temporary and it could last, it could be renewed, but definitely it's good news. It's good news for the US, it's good news for China, it's good news for the world economy. I think if we look at how it happened and the details about it, first, them meeting in South Korea is something of a positive sign, but also a sign that China is comfortable going to a very close US ally and negotiating a trade deal in that country, not on its own turf, not on its own territory, and still come up as the more stable, the more firm, but also the more stabilizing force in the world, while Trump, on the other hand, did get what he wants. He did save face, while his tariff policies were not delivering as well as he thought they would deliver. So he was able to save face and manage to get some kind of an agreement done there. But definitely, altogether, I think it is good news for markets in general. Less good news for Trump's tariffs policies altogether.
But also good news that the two biggest economies are now having face-to-face talks, and the tit-for-tat that we've seen throughout the last year seems to have died down a little bit. But Gemma, it's really interesting because Dr. Elie just mentions the global economies there, much optimism in the stock markets ahead of this meeting between Xi and Trump. But can global markets trust this deal? And we have to think about it when it comes to really big issues, things that weren't talked about, like TikTok, tech, Taiwan. A lot of thorny issues were kind of brushed over.
Yeah, I think right now, a lot that we see with Trump, it's really just words at the moment. You know, nothing's been agreed, nothing's been formally put down. So we sort of have that at the moment. So the market confidence, global markets, are really going to hinge on the implementation of this final agreement and the enforcement of that, obviously. So there's no point just having an agreement without it being enforced. Now, this deal, along with ongoing diplomatic and economic developments, will all affect the global markets. But I think right now it's very much in a wait and see or sit and wait, time will tell kind of phase, because, as we say, nothing's been formally agreed right now. Now, I think There's a lot of pros and cons to this before we go into, the things which weren't discussed. The pros is that the deal signals a willingness for these two superpowers to sit down and have these conversations. And on the negative, as you said, there was so much that was left unsaid. And I actually think what was left unsaid is louder than what was said. Tech, there's so many issues around technology. These have been ongoing for quite a long time with regards to security, intellectual property, cyber security, and then obviously the issue of Taiwan, again, been going on for a very long time. So, yeah, they haven't tackled these deep, deep-rooted issues, but I wouldn't expect those to come up. These are decades old. They're not something that can be sorted out, over a meeting in South Korea. And I sort of don't think we're going to hear about those for a while, to be honest.
And it's interesting because Donald Trump is the momentum's man. We can say that. We saw him on this tour in Asia. Dr. Elie had so much energy. He was dancing. He looked like he really enjoyed himself. Donald Trump is momentum. You look at Xi Jinping from China. It's very different. It's very playbook. Everything's extremely scripted. So very different leaders coming together. But it's a willingness, like Gemma said, to talk, to get on the same table. We know that Ukraine and Russia is still a big sticking point. So I wonder if the closer relationship will be able to change the climate that we're living in at the moment, geopolitically, possibly.
Yeah. First, let's ask ourselves which one does the market like better? The more poised, the more easy, the more texted, statements, or Trump's way of declarations and dancing and ceremonial stuff and so on. So I think even that is starting to appear more and more at odds with what the rest of the world wants and what the rest of the world needs. The world needs decreasing of tensions. The world needs more talking, which is not what has been happening in the past. Now it's a very good sign, and I completely agree with Gemma on the fact that so many things were left out, but then this is a very good sign that we're not willing to pick a fight on this or that. We're more willing to sit down and talk because we know it's on both interest, on a mutual interest, to sit down and talk. Even if we agree on 40, 50, 60%, and the rest is not done, already this is a big achieve for both of us and for the world economy, which is something good.
And yes, of course, now we see China will buy more soybeans from the US, and China will not put so many export restrictions when it comes to its rare earth minerals. But another thing I was thinking about a little bit earlier, Donald Trump has a much more positive tone towards China than the likes of Joe Biden. So in some ways, we see things slightly beginning to change when it comes to the US. Yes, he went hard on tariffs, but he seems to have rolled back a little bit.
This seems to be the playbook, right? He comes out hard, lots of rhetoric, lots of big words. It creates tension. And then it's like he needs that tension in order to move forward with what he actually wants to do. I think we've seen it time and time again. I will say, though, I feel that China has come out of this looking a lot better, Xi and China, than Trump and the US. They're moving on to that place as a global superpower and as diplomatic statesmen in the world that has hitherto, I think, eluded them. They're reaching a place, they've shown that they can take on Trump at his own game with the tariffs. They didn't blink. I think he blinked first, to be honest with you. And so I do feel that they have been quite the winners in all of this.
He came out more humbled, if I may say, in a sense, yes. And then is it a smart strategic tactic, or is it, the the arsonist fireman, in the sense that he puts on the fire and then he claims that he is the hero who put it off? This is his way of functioning. Now, going back to your question, is this rapprochement going to change a lot on the world scene? I don't think so. I think that a lot of tensions, and like what happened with Russia leading to the Ukraine war, a lot of tension that was potentially going to lead to a war in Taiwan, it's always good to decrease this tension and to speak about how to cooperate all together. Doesn't mean that any major shifts in strategy is going to happen. Doesn't mean that China and the US are going to become allies. Doesn't mean that Russia and China are going to separate. But still, each state have its own interest at heart. They're going to continue to have their own interests at heart, and these interests are by nature contradicting and competing interests.
And I think what Gemma said is really interesting, because you remember in Donald Trump's first term, that's when we really heard a lot about China, and we heard a lot about tariffs. And when I look at China, and I think a lot of other people do, analysts, they think that China did a good job at diversifying and finding different markets to sell to. And China have worked very hard on that. And that's probably why they can play the long game in the situation they're in.
Practically, they can play the long game, yes, but then we should not underestimate the American market. Yeah. It's a 340, 360 million consumers that get a lot from China. That alone, closing that market, could have been a big hit to the Chinese economy. And even if they have other markets around the globe, nothing can really compete with that US market in terms of spending, in terms of all of that. And this is what Trump was betting on. Yet, for that economy to put tariffs like on Chinese products, eventually the Chinese product is going to cost the same. It's going to be exported at the same cost. Then it's going to be hit with tariffs, and then it's the US consumer who's going to pay that difference. So this is where I think Trump understood that his policy is not directly going to get the positive results he wants, and he needed to rethink that and to get to that kind of a truce, at least temporary, to see how things are going to evolve. And we need to remember that he's going back in April, as it was said, which is a good sign. He's going to China to continue discussing maybe all the other tension issues that you mentioned.
And we know that his dancing's become a big hit on TikTok. So I'm sure Donald Trump is going to make sure that he keeps TikTok in the US. But stay right there as we move on to another story now. And ahead of his meeting with President Xi, Trump ordered the US military to resume testing of nuclear weapons in order to keep up with countries like Russia and China. In a post on Truth Social, he said, "Because of other countries' testing programs, I have instructed the Department of War to start testing our nuclear weapons on an equal basis. That process will begin immediately." Gemma, this is something that he was talking about ahead of his meeting with Xi Jinping. But what are the risks and implications if the US resumes nuclear testing? And this will be after more than 30 years. It's been a long time.
It's been a really long time. I didn't think I would see something like this again. You know, I lived through the first kind of nuclear proliferation and the rise of CND, and I think the timing of his announcement is very telling. You know, it was before he met with Xi. It was when he'd said that in 5 years, China's nuclear program will be even with the US. So he's already sowing, you know, the seeds to come out and say this. And obviously this week, Russia tested a new nuclear-capable cruise missile. Again, we're just saying nuclear-capable. That's the language. No one's actually saying nuclear warheads here. So the timing is impeccable. Now, when it comes to the risks and implications, they cover so many aspects globally. We're talking security, legal, diplomatic, economic, environmental, health, technical. There is not an area of life that won't be touched by this across so many nations as well. Now, what I found very interesting, and what most analysts are agreed on, that this is a high risk and a high cost decision. Because at the moment, the US uses a program called the Stockpile Stewardship, and they can run all their tests through that, which will give them outcomes. So it's not really necessary to be doing this kind of tests. I feel that it's a show. You know, he wants to show the world that the USA is still kind of number one in, you know, with nuclear weapons. But what I found most interesting as well, obviously the US last conducted nuclear test in 1992. Now, the time from Trump saying, we are going to test a nuclear weapon, the capability, yes, to it actually happening is between 24 and 36 months. This isn't something that's going to happen immediately. We're looking at a very long time frame here. And as we know, Trump's time frames, he doesn't kind of do well in very long time frames.
In the next couple of weeks.
Exactly. He loves a couple of weeks.
Yes.
So who knows what will happen.
But I find this such a fascinating situation that we're in right now because, as we said, he went to meet President Xi Jinping. Gemma mentioned there Russia testing nuclear-capable missiles and also a nuclear-capable underwater drone, which we haven't heard about before.
Yeah.
So the big question here is Donald Trump's announcement triggering a new race for nuclear arms? Is this kind of what's happening at the moment?
Or is it a reaction to an arms race that is already happening? Since China is ongoing and Russia has tested new weapons. But maybe let's start with, when we say testing, again, there's nothing that to be tested in the nuclear bomb itself. So if you're testing, it's either testing new delivery mechanisms or nuclear-capable kinds of warfare, or you are developing a new kind of a bomb, which in all these senses is quite catastrophic. But is it not happening already? That's the question. And we have to remind ourselves that all these treaties of non-proliferation or attempts on non-testing, there was the partial non-testing treaty and then the comprehensive non-testing treaties, these were not able to actually stop things. We started with the 60s and then nothing happened throughout the Cold War, until after the Cold War, where nobody felt the rush and the tension to need to prove his power, where things started to fade away. And then France and the US were the last ones, 92, 93, to stop testing publicly, knowing that we have India, Pakistan, Israel, and North Korea that have not signed any kind of treaty of non-proliferation, and they kept testing nuclear weapons.
And what I found really interesting is earlier I actually spoke to Tobias Alwood, a defense and security analyst, and he said to me back in the Cold War, there was a lot of back-channel diplomacy happening during that time, and that's something we're not seeing right now, and that is the major concern. And it's really interesting because China's foreign ministry, in relation to what Donald Trump announced, called for the US to abide by its commitment to a moratorium of nuclear testing and uphold the global strategic balance and stability. So we are seeing this feeling right now that back-channel diplomacy is really important and people need to roll back a little bit because North Korea is also testing. A lot of it is happening.
But also there's China with that calming language again, isn't it? Them stepping up to become this calm voice in the world. And obviously Russia commented as well, saying they've never departed from the fact that Russia will act accordingly, whatever happens. They always use these quite sort of vague terms, vaguely threatening as well. But I think China's reaction was really interesting.
Indeed, I think any kind of lack of communication in such a situation in international politics will create tension, and tension will create the fear factor, and the fear factor would lead to espionage, warfare, would lead to an arms race, would lead to all kind of escalations in that sense. And this is what we're not ready for, but in fact, this is just a continuation of what we have been seeing in the past few years, which is a complete backpedaling on the international new world order that was created in the 90s, back into nationalistic tensions and a show of power and power balance in world order.
But just a quick thought on this. We're seeing this nuclear testing happening in various different countries. And I do wonder if the likes of Ukraine, who had never given up their nuclear weapons, would be in the situation they were right now with Russia. So our country's thinking, actually, we need to keep our nukes to a degree to keep ourselves safe.
It has been the most effective deterrent, but it has never been used in a warfare. So it's something that you cannot easily use, but it is definitely a reassurance and a show of force. And we know for sure that this was an integral part of the strategic Saudi-Pakistani alliance to say that we are here and we have this deterring powers, be it in the face of Israel or any other power. It is definitely that, but it also has its restrictions and definitely the potential of launching us into an arm race.
Thank you so much for your thoughts on that. Now let's move on. The Dutch centrist-liberal party D66 and the far-right Freedom Party are currently in a neck-and-neck election race. So far, about 99% of the votes are counted and both parties are heading for 26 seats in the 150-member parliament. That's according to a projection from one Dutch news agency. This close race comes after initial exit polls put 38-year-old Robert Jetton in the lead. Dr. Elie, this is a super surprising result. It wasn't expected. A centrist Liberal Party gaining so much popularity, whilst it looks like a lot of Europe is turning to the right, which we've seen. What is the reason behind this result so far?
Well, if we want to talk about the general trends, we can talk about the norm of a pendulum, where people would go to the extreme when they are unhappy, will test that extreme, then find out it's not suitable for them, and that they will rebalance to the center. Don't forget that we have seen a lot of resurgence of leftist parties, be it in the UK, in Denmark, in other countries around Europe. So it's not completely unpredicted or unexpected. Knowing that, again, extremes, be it extreme right or extreme left, have proven to be unable to deliver on their promises and unable to govern in a more stable and suitable way in that sense. So it's not a complete surprise, but definitely we are seeing a party that is going back 11 out of its 37 seats. So that's losing a lot significantly. And then the rising powers are also the ones who can present something. Now, keeping an eye on Dutch elections, it's such a complex country with such a complex system. We have a huge number of political parties, and we're talking about 26, as you said, out of 150. So that's the maximum. So it's going to be a huge coalition of more than 4 or 5 parties, which again is going to put us in that cycle of, can you deliver on your campaign promises?
And I think that's what Geert Wilders found very difficult, didn't he?
Exactly.
From the far-right Freedom Party. He couldn't get through any of his measures that he was elected on, and that's eventually why the coalition collapsed. But Gemma, what happens now? We're obviously going to see another coalition formed. As Dr. Elie said, it's a very complex situation, but that could take months. Who could it be?
It could take a very long time. As we've seen globally, coalitions become a point of negotiation. Everybody, says what they would like to happen, and, the outcome can take a very long time. Now, at the moment, it is a tie, 26 seats apiece. Now, they're still counting, obviously, and the international votes from, Dutch people living abroad won't come in till Monday. But I think we can assume that this is where we're at. Now, no parties have said they are willing to form a coalition with Wilders. So he is out of the picture now. It's down to Jetton and the D66 party.
For now. If they manage to get the coalition.
Yes, if they manage to get the coalition. Now, the most likely coalition will be D66-led and will include... Now, there are the other night's big winners, as I like to call them, the Christian Democratic CDA. Now, they quadrupled their seats to 18. As you said, there's so many parties. The Liberal Conservative, VVD, and the Centre-Left, which is an alliance between the Green Left and the Labour Party. This is looking like the most likely coalition. Now, obviously, I said earlier, this is going to be about so many people now negotiating what they want in order to form this. But D66 are very much aligned with the CDA. Now, they ran a campaign on a return to, quote, decent, responsible, respectful and on-topic politics. Very balanced, none of this crazy rhetoric we've seen from other parties. And also what I found interesting was during the campaign, so Jetton's party, traditionally, their themes are on climate change and education. Now, he also shifted during the campaign to talk about immigration and the housing crisis. And I think that shows his willingness to listen to what voters 100%. Are looking for, to what other parties are bringing up. So that he's already showing, hey, I'm willing to negotiate, I'm willing to discuss other things. And I think that's going to be really important for the coalition.
Again, the traditional right and left parties of Europe no longer answer the needs of the people. So they need to reinvent themselves. The more they do that and the more they create this new alternative speech people will shift away from extremist party into the normal center. Again, where economic policies are not extremely varied. We know what works for the economy. We just need to deal with immigration, with housing, with environment, with these kinds of day-to-day issues that the people are suffering from, and actually be able to give them alternative discourse that they can resort to.
But what I also find fascinating is Rob Jetton. He's young, he's 38. He brought so much positive energy to this campaign. A reporter was telling me about this earlier, who I was speaking to, and she was saying one thing that Jetton did was he did so well in the debates, because, you know, Geert Wilders has been in the political sphere for 20 years in the Netherlands. But we just couldn't hack the debates because he was in power and they were failing. Normally he's the opposition. And, you know, we've seen this in so many countries, you know, could be leading in the polls.
Trend of young leaders, you know, hitting the debates, but hitting also the campaigns with very fresh ideas. And
being active on social media and posing for selfies with people, which old school politicians don't do. I don't think they truly understand the power of it. He is young, he is handsome. It really puts me in mind of when JFK and Nixon had their televised debates, and Nixon was shown up to just be not as charismatic and dynamic, and the visual is so important. And I think Jetton is of that generation who completely understands this.
No, definitely. I know to have someone who possibly be leading a country that's younger than me is slightly scary.
I've passed that long time ago. Well, you have to remember the Prime Minister of Finland. I think she's 24 years old.
No, she. Yes, I was looking up because she was the one who I thought about straight away. Because remember, she was always photographed in a nightclub having a party. She was actually the same age as me, so she's a little bit older.
Makes one wonder what one's been doing with our lives.
Exactly. Stay right there as we move on to another story now. And police in Paris have arrested 5 more suspects in the region as part of their investigation into the Louvre heist. Paris public prosecutor made the announcement this morning. It means there's now been 7 arrests over the incident that made headlines around the world. However, the stolen items still haven't been found. Well, I mean, Gemma, that's the crux of the whole situation. We've got arrests happening, you know, left, right and centre, but the jewels, no crown jewels.
No jewels. So 5 new arrests have been made, which brings the total to 7. And these were made, coordinated across Paris late last night. So what I like is, of the 5 new suspects, one of them is believed to have been part of the 4-man gang which actually carried out the heist. So they now have, the police say they have 3 out of the 4 men. Now, whether they start turning on each other or not, you know, is kind of a book waiting to be written, I think, a kind of thriller waiting to be written. But, it's the 2 of the suspects have partially, which I think is quite an interesting term that was used, partially, you know, admitted their part in the heist. Now, they can be held for up to 4 days, but I think we can presume there was obviously DNA left at the scene, there's DNA from the bikes, that the police have enough evidence to continue here. But they are still no closer to finding these jewels. Now, the prosecutor, Laurie Beckow, she has said she has a small hope that they might be recovered, and she says she's optimistic that they will find the 4th man, but she hasn't expressed optimism about finding the jewels intact.
It's absolutely fascinating because everyone wants to know where the jewels are. And this was such an audacious heist. It was basically broad daylight. They carried this out. They dropped one tiara, Dr. Henny. I mean, it was all
damaged it.
And damaged it. You know, the execution was a bit of a shambles. But why can't they find the diamonds? And I mean, what is going on here?
Again, the heist was so much of a chaos that they left so much DNA, as Gemma was saying, and this is through the DNA that they started picking up the members of that gang, and then, of course, leading from one thing to the other. Finding the jewels is a completely different story. Most probably, if we know from historical events, from other incidences, they would have already been decomposed, that would have dismantled, and then distributed in ways that were most probably premeditated even before the crime actually happened. And it is very, very difficult to actually keep trace of where are the jewels now and who got them and who have they been sold to. Are they in France, out of France? There's so many ways of removing them and using them for their purposes. Another very important point is, will they turn on each other or not? And this is the historical that we teach at the university, the prisoner's dilemma. So when you put them in different rooms and you ask them the questions and tell them, oh, okay, the other is telling on you. If you manage to actually tell me, then you would get a decreased sentence and so on. And this is what the police technically, by the playbook, do it. And usually it works. If these guys are, strong enough to hold their story, if they are strong enough to stand their ground and not tell on each other, it's going to be a really difficult case to prove in court, but also even more difficult to actually find out where the jewels have been taken.
I would be a terrible robber.
Would you squeal straight away?
Squeal straight
right,
away
okay.
For a shorter term.
We can't do a robbery with Leigh-Ann because she would absolutely give us up straight away.
Yeah. Our next.
Because as soon as someone was like,
oh,
Dr. Elie said this, I'll be like, agree with Dr. Elie, agree with Dr. Elie, give me a shorter sentence. But thank you so much for your thoughts on that. But I just want to give you some breaking news that's coming out of Buckingham Palace tonight. Prince Andrew, brother of King Charles III, will officially lose his title of Prince and will now be known as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. He will also have to move out of Royal Lodge in the grounds of Windsor Castle, and this comes as more allegations regarding his relationship with the sex offender Jeffrey Epstein have become public. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on this, Gemma and Dr. Elie.
No regrets whatsoever. I think it took too long to reach this stage.
I think the palace looked like they were dithering, and I actually think Charles has looked like he's dithering. I think this has been driven by William, like 100%. But yes, they have been. It's been far too slow. They were reacting to the book coming out. Yes, it's all looked reactionary as opposed to getting ahead of it. And I also think oftentimes the British royal family think they can just wait out public opinion, but the building of public opinion and the strength of feeling in the UK, they have not been able to ignore.
And so many people, so many victims will say, is this enough?
Yeah.
We want a conviction. If he is a sex offender, we want a conviction. It's not enough to move out of the light and then live your life
into
another
another lovely big house as well, So there is the punishment because we know that Andrew loves being a prince, and everything that comes with it. But he's still being moved into a lovely big house, even though it has the title cottage in it, because I think he's moving to Frogmore Cottage, yes. And obviously his wife, Sarah Ferguson, she's been given a house as part of the deal as well. So you're right, there are some people who are going to say, well, this is not really much of a punishment.
But I think you're absolutely right when it comes to the royal family not acting fast enough and William being behind this scenario because he was really keen to make sure that the story was quietened down, because obviously we saw Prince Andrew, he did the BBC interview to try and quash the rumours that kept on escalating around Virginia Giuffre. Her biography came out. She obviously lost her life. She took her own life because of the Epstein scandal. So there we go. We see Prince Andrew officially leaving his royal titles, and he will be leaving the 30-bedroom royal lodge that he lives in. But thank you so much for your reaction to that story coming out of Buckingham Palace tonight in the UK. Now, it's that time of the show where Dr. Elie and Gemma have chosen two of their quirkiest stories of the day. And Dr. Elie, your story...
Continuing with the monkey business.
Yes.
But also, this is fishing for Halloween, I think this story is.
I feel like it's about, a continuation of the monkey business. And I really feel like Halloween's tomorrow.
Yes.
This story...
You've picked a suitably...
It's really a terrific story. It's Mississippi, the USA, where we have a truck transporting lab monkeys that have been tested on and infected by so many different diseases, including, as far as we've heard, hepatitis, COVID, all other kind of diseases. And this truck have an accident in the middle of the highway. It turns over and the monkeys get on the loose. And then it takes a whole manhunt for several hours to actually recover the monkeys. They had to euthanize or kill some of them, and there's still one missing. Just to make it good enough for the Halloween Eve, one monkey that is infected with a serious disease is still running around in Mississippi.
Patient zero on the loose.
This is, I've seen this film. I have seen this movie and I know how it ends. So yes, people of Mississippi, they should be staying indoors, I think.
It's an absolutely fascinating
It's
story.
crazy.
It is crazy. And let's hope that that monkey is eventually found and everybody is safe in Mississippi. And Gemma, let's talk about yours because, you know, I'm not sure about the situation, but it's about a savvy salesman who's managed to get his wedding suit sponsored. Oh, there's pictures of it up there. Tell us more.
Awesome picture.
So yeah, and I would like to know if you guys would go for this. So this is, excuse me, French salesman Dagobert Renouf. Now what he did is he sold patches on his wedding day tuxedo. He got married on October the 27th. And he wanted to cover some of the cost of the wedding. So AI and tech companies all bought a patch there on his wedding tuxedo. And yeah, that's how he got married. And
like he had the chart, and this patch will cost this much, and this.
You know, like Formula One drivers,
exactly.
when it's like, well, this is going to be on the arm and this is going to be here. Yeah, so I guess if you paid more, you kind of got to be at the front there. But yeah, it was.
What was the wife's reaction?
She looks very happy. Leigh-Ann, she looks very happy in these photos there. You know, she's not visibly annoyed.
Look at his suit.
I know, I think it's awful. But do you know what is the kicker on this, I think? He made $7,500.
No way, man. No
And I know that, I appreciate that's a fair chunk of money, but I thought this would be like 100,000, you know, where he paid for the wedding and he paid for the honeymoon. And
would you do it for 100,000?
Maybe for 100,000.
I would do it for 100,000.
On your wedding?
On your veil or your
goodness.
dress?
All over.
All over.
For 100,000. Yeah, why not?
But not for 7,500.
Not for 7,500. But, you know, we laugh at this and it looks a little bit mental. Let's all put, I mean, it just looks like something out of a thrift store that went really wrong. But he's completely thinking out of the box here, and I quite like that, don't you, Dr. Elie and Gemma?
No.
You wouldn't...
Trying to see the companies that actually bought this patch. What did they get?
It was a lot of AI,
that?
like AI and tech companies. Yeah, because he's in sort of AI. He's done a few startups and things like this. Now, what he said is he called it as much as an experiment as a statement. And I thought, how lovely for your wife that you chose your wedding day to do this experiment. You know, you couldn't have chosen. One wonders what they might do when their first child comes along. Maybe they'll have an auction, you know, name your child, you know, after your brand and we'll do it. Who knows, you know,
or
what the next step will be.
tattoo the child with the name of your company.
Yes.
We've seen tattoos as advertising,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
For companies. Yes.
I've never seen
Yeah,
that.
some people, have done it, yeah.
Wow.
I think there was a period of time when fast food companies were going on social media and offering, you know, free chicken or whatever for a lifetime if you got, you know, their brand tattooed on you. But yeah, I think the baby's going to be given a brand name.
But I do think it's so interesting because I do often wonder about people who think about out of the box. And there's something I like about this story because, you know,
Not on your wedding day, Leigh-Ann, not on your wedding day.
Any other day.
Any other day.
Any other wedding day. I don't know. But I think, but like we said, it didn't make much money. But then we are talking about the story right now.
Yes.
So it is generating a little bit of hype in the world of the media. So hopefully you'll make some money through this. And it did say that he
Good luck.
was trying to set up a company. He spent 5 years doing it, and I don't think it was very successful. So maybe he's trying to generate some money to get a kettle. Because, you know, when you get married, you buy all your home things.
Yes, you need all those
Kettle and
things,
pots.
yeah.
So maybe that was all about, I don't know.
Well, he's got a suit. He can't, you know, most people, I think, with a wedding suit, they're like, oh, I could wear this again for something else. But, you know, no, he's not gonna wear that one again.
C'est la vie. But anyway, thanks to our guests today, correspondent and columnist Gemma White and Dr. Elie Al Hindy, chairperson of the Department of Security and Strategic Studies at the American University in the Emirates. And that's all from us on W News Extra. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Of course, follow us on X. G&T will be coming up next. Goodbye and thank you.